the video, and the next 30-35 minutes would be engaging, very engaging with you, like every other session that we have. So our topic for the day, it's a very critical, very crucial topics, and I reckon the Confluence is pretty much known for the fact now that we'll look into the topics, look into the issues that usually people are, what I would say, that a bit passive with discussion, because it's just so sensitive of the topics at the times. And one such sensitive issue that probably is not an effect, rather is a cause of a certain effect, and not just one effect but numerous effects, in fact, is harnessing healthy boundaries of corporate workplace. So navigating through issues is very difficult for anyone, any corporate professional. But not just letting an issue take place at first place, that is a bigger superpower. So we'll be working on that. And this topic today that we have is basically all about that. It's all about just how exactly can we make sure that we have a wonderful, very enriching environment for everybody, and to make sure that everybody actually goes along very well with the rest of the person. I'll be very casual with expressing myself, because it's a very sensitive topic, and we've got to be very, very open for everyone who's viewing this video right now and watching. And again, like always, our specialist, I would rather say, as usual, would be my mother, our creative head as well, and again coming up with all the insights regarding this topic that she has. So welcome, ma'am, welcome back again. Yeah, your mic, I reckon your mic is mute, ma'am.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me, as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thanks a lot. So, you know what, ma'am, when we are working with people, when we're working in different offices and different settings at workplaces, people come from diverse backgrounds. And
True.
especially nowadays when, people are working virtually. So, a team consists of team members from various nationalities, various cultures, representing different thought processes, and they converge at a place called a company that has a vision, that has a mission. And for the managers as well, managing diverse team members, teams that are diverse, very diverse in fact. And some of the people, they have these sensitive lines that they don't, these boundaries that didn't want to be crossed. Everybody has their own boundaries, and it's not just that they have it for everyone. We have different boundaries for different people. uh, that depends mainly on our personality and kind of the job we have. Like our colleagues who are from finance department, usually it's a very sensitive thing, a very sensitive department, very sensitive information that they carry. So they usually don't like to be unnecessarily touched, and you visited by other colleagues for gossips and all that, because there is a lot of information that is there with them, and very sensitive information. So they have to have this specific aura, I would say, a kind of aura that they would like to have, so that everybody just understands that it's not out of bound, but still there is a boundary that needs to be respected. So how exactly, the topic itself that we have chosen, harnessing healthy boundaries, what exactly is a boundary, and what is a healthy boundary, and what is a healthy and unhealthy boundary, and how exactly do we differentiate and how to maintain that?
Thank you so much for bringing this up. Nansa, I personally feel that workplace, initially we all know about the industrial revolution and everything happened. Not everybody was welcome to come and work together at the same place. I mean, there were gender biases, there were gender restrictions. So, based on that,
Yeah.
I think as man has evolved from time to time, so has the explanation for our boundaries. I think there's a lot that has to do with workplace harassment that came into play, and that only
Yeah.
happened because yes, some certain boundaries have to be set. And if I could
Yeah.
just, from encapsulating from that place, I think a very written definition that we have right here, it talks about creating healthy boundaries in a professional environment which can lead to more productive and positive relationships. Now, this is
Yeah.
exactly what we are going to explore today, which is about setting and then communicating the boundaries in the workplace. And why
Yeah.
is it really important to have them in the first place? Reason being, I think over years, when we have come across working in different domains, different departments, you rise from ranks and you realize that not everything is supposed to be discussed. Not everything is supposed to be discussed with everybody. So there's so
Yeah.
many levels and tangents on which people operate in a workplace, and how that has to be systematic, at the same time smooth. That has to be defined by defining your own boundaries around you. So boundaries, yes, but healthy ones. And how do we come to that is what we're going to talk about today.
Perfect, mom. Thank you very much. I mean, very comprehensive, but of course, you took a very little time to clarify all that, just to set the tone. So, if you proceed a bit ahead of it, talking about these healthy boundaries and how exactly, getting the limits, understanding the limits of our other colleagues. So, how exactly healthy boundaries help? Why it matters a lot that the managers, they should actually educate their team members about this very element.
Okay, so when I think we can always relate with some examples also, but eventually. So, healthy boundaries, why do they really matter? See, not everybody, when they enter the workplace or really know how to communicate or interact with their colleagues sometimes.
Sure.
This is an education not everybody comes in default with. Simple as that. It's a certain
Sure.
ethic for which some trainings are also given in institutions and organizations so that people can be trained to know how to hone the culture and then own the culture that you have at your workplace.
Sure.
In order to make it a
Right.
cordial one, there are certain limits or areas that you draw your own parameters around. Why and does that really help? That helps you. Why? Because it sort of helps you reduce stress. There's lesser pressure on you. You know there's a set boundary and nobody's going to cross it, and I don't have to cross theirs. So there's a set rule that you sort of tend to follow, and then you know that you're not going to go wrong. Otherwise, बहुत इस बात का ही स्ट्रेस कि ठीक कर रहे हैं गलत कर रहे हैं कि ये ठीक भी है ये होना चाहिए कि नहीं होना चाहिए भी एक बहुत बड़ा प्रेशर होता है इट अफेक्ट्स योर प्रोडक्टिविटी ऑल्सो so not just reduce the stress of
Sure.
what you're operating and how you're operating, you sort of go into the zone where your productivity also doesn't get affected, which is why it's an important
Right.
factor to define your boundaries around you. I mean, then it is a given that's supposed to become respectful. देखिए, the moment हम boundaries define कर देते हैं लोग बहुत limit हो जाते हैं आपके पास. You,
Sure.
and I always say you can be friendly but you can't be friends. As much as you can be friends, I
Right.
mean, you female colleagues can be friends and so much more, but then there's a respectful demeanor that has to be presented. There has to be an exhibition of a professional aura around you. It has to be very, very focused because work shouldn't be affected, right? And also, on the
Right.
contrary, sometimes there are different people protecting for their own, operating on their own levels, and they might act a little different sometimes. They might be nice to you today, but tomorrow they might just get back at you because you shared something too personal with them. So it's a very fine
Right.
line where you define your boundaries, though, but they always protect you. They're there to help the employees understand that this set of instruction or rules are going to go in their favor once they define it. It's like there's a circle around the fire.
Right.
You tell them not to go inside or outside of it because somewhere it's going to be for your own protection. That's the idea, really. Jay.
Perfectly right, ma'am. Thank you very much. And I reckon, just sum it up, sum this whole thing up right now, is that we have to understand the fact that we are at a particular place called workplace, and there is a big reason why everybody gathers there. We spend like 9, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9 hours, depends what kind of company culture we are working on, what kind of job requirement is there. And during that, it is important that the environment should be conducive. But it is equally important that if we are not giving any undue favor to anyone, we should not be hurting anyone either.
So,
And on the other end, we should make it conducive enough that everybody should be accessible but purposefully. This is what I've grasped from your impression, that it is important that we should actually, go along, get along. Sharing a cup of tea is okay, fine, that's pretty good. But over the cup of tea, it's not just always gossips. Who's doing what? It's about the ideas. It's about how exactly we can be working on a certain project. So that can somehow help us out. So just proceeding further with the types of boundaries, because this is something very important for someone like me to know exactly, okay, if somebody's talking about the boundaries, what kind of boundaries we are talking about, what kind of dimensions to these healthy boundaries do we have?
okay, so very interestingly, why is that also a very big question today in the time zone that we have? Because we're dealing with millennials, we're dealing with some other zones as well. So इतने region से जब लोग आते हैं different generation से अब तो लोग साथ काम कर रहे हैं and people are welcoming the younger ones to enter the market. I mean, we would like to innovate every time with their ideas. So,
Sure.
looking forward to that, we are finding a few things that need to be said. Very rightly put here as well. There's some physical boundaries we're talking about. We're talking about emotional
Yeah.
boundaries, then digital boundaries, and then time related boundaries. अब अगर उनकी मैं वजाहत करती
Sure.
चलूँ So it's very simple to understand, and I think we set this rule even at the beginning. I think every HR should incorporate this training in their program while inducting a employee as well, or any employee with
Right.
employees as well. And why does that help? देखिए आप इमोशनली लोगों को जब समझा देंगे they have to protect themselves in their personal footage, their feelings and emotions cannot get hurt. Because honestly speaking, Ananta, I think, and you can also relate, we come across so many employees and so many counterparts who join us, and these sweet colleagues are so naive, sometimes they overshare, and that leads them to trouble.
Yeah.
That's also a boundary we
Exactly
set.
right.
So emotions really play a huge role in, I mean, if your work, I always say, अगर आपका दिल नहीं है तो आप उस काम के लिए भी क्यों आते हैं जहाँ आपका दिल नहीं लगता, ठीक है? And
Exactly right.
like I
Well
always
put.
say, I mean, once you do something that you love to do, it doesn't look like it's no more work for you when you come to work, right? So in any case,
Exactly.
personal feelings को, emotions को work पे protect करना, while you're of course being empathetic as well, that's very important. So I could get emotional today. Somebody entered my office and said, ma'am, did you like do something with yourself because you sound a little off? Well, I had heard a case and it was very heart touching, so it was a little emotional also. But then again, I have to know my job, I have to know my boundaries as well. I know I cannot disconnect myself, I have to disconnect myself from that emotional side and have to set this particular parameter around me where I can't just cross that border and actually convey. I can be empathetic, and like I said, friendly but not friends. So I know my line there. That's one. फिर आ जाती है फिजिकल बाउंड्री. देखिए, a set of instructions, a colleague, especially when they are opposite gender interacting with you, there has to be this respectful dimension around you that should establish certain protective measures for your personal space and privacy at work. So even at the colleague looking over at what your screen is, showing, is not really a good idea. I mean, we usually work in our offices. Sometimes we're working in silos. Sometimes you're working in proper cubicles. So you can actually, look at each other and, be around each other a lot. Sometimes we're sharing kitchens. Sometimes we're interacting in a particular conference per se. So उस सूरत हाल में भी आप दूसरे जेंडर के साथ कितना रिस्पेक्टफुल हैं, और हजरात कितना कंफर्टेबल फील कराते हैं ख़वातीन को, और ख़वातीन कितना कंफर्टेबल फील करा देती हैं हजरात को, टू बी इन दैट रिस्पेक्टफुल environment, so that it becomes easier to work. Like I said, no stress, and then no productivity being affected also. फिर एक टाइम की बाउंड्री है.
Definitely.
It's about being available and not available at your time. Sometimes हम बहुत परेशान होके बॉस का फ़ोन आ रहा है, हम रात में उठा लेंगे या कुछ इस तरह, नहीं. आई थिंक वर्कलोड और डेडलाइंस अपनी जगह हैं, बट उनको प्रायोरिटाइज करके, आई अंडरस्टैंड एवरी वर्क कल्चर इज़ डिफरेंट. येस, समटाइम्स फॉर एग्जांपल बैंक्स के लिए क्लोजिंग का टाइम बहुत टफ होता है, इंस्टीट्यूशंस के लिए, इदारों के लिए
Exactly.
इंडक्शन का टाइम बहुत डिफिकल्ट होता है, सेल्स के लिए
Yeah.
लेट्स से विंटर कलेक्शन आ गया तो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होगा. आई अंडरस्टैंड दैट, दैट्स अ बाउंड्री, दैट्स अ टाइम दैट यू सेट, येस. बट अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, seasons are an exception. However, what's your time boundary decided to take your boss's call? Otherwise, it's not going to be taken well. So, setting that tone to your professional life is always a good measure. I think हम अक्सर परेशान होकर नहीं करते हैं, होता कुछ नहीं है, हम सामने वाले को बताते हैं ये वी आर अवेलेबल, एंड दैट इज नॉट अ गुड मैसेज एनीवे इन अ प्रोफेशनल सेटिंग,
Yeah.
because you could just
Exactly right.
exploit it against it, right? Number three, you're also
Exactly.
taking away that fair chance from other people who cannot be available because of some family reasons से क्या, और आप ले जाते हैं वो जगह. That's not it.
Exactly.
I think थोड़ा सा वो उसमें fairness होना भी ज़रूरी है, तो ये भी एक छोटा सा angle है that I sort of thought of. Fourth is your
Sure.
digital wala part. This is so important nowadays because managing the use of your technology, your social media, your digital communication, because it's so difficult because you're almost all the time here. So very recently somebody
Yeah.
said that it is so amazing to see, or it's surprising to see, it was a compliment, I don't know, that you're always available on WhatsApp. I said, well, I'm not on my phone the whole time. My desktop version is open because that's how we operate. Our groups are in function, we work in
Right.
collaborations, and for that, our groups are always functional. So that was very appealing for somebody to say, number one. Number two, understanding that not everything can be shared every time is also a boundary that you set. So workload
Exactly.
hours are there for a reason. They're not in the night time, they're in the daytime, they're in the wee hours. Why is that happening around you? So managing that alongside all that comes along with setting your boundaries is a part and parcel of the game. And वेरी बेसिक जिस मौजू पे अक्सर हम बात नहीं करते, लेकिन ये निहायत ही अहम हिस्सा है टू ऑपरेट इन अ प्रोफेशनल सेटिंग. हनान साहब,
Yeah.
ओवर टू यू.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Of course, I mean, all these four dimensions and very, what I would say, comprehensively discussed by yourself. So, I would just like to add a couple of things. Not add, rather, I would just try to sum it up because when it comes to physical space and when it comes to, when we are working with our female colleagues, so I think this also should be incorporated within the HR's training and development curriculum. They need to tell people. They need to tell males and they need to tell females about all that. It's very crucial. It's very, very crucial because many of the issues can, like we have already said, we are just talking how not to let something happen
टू.
uh, later,
आपको याद
so
होगा
it's
मैं.
it's important we need to understand that both genders have certain limitations. Both genders have to have this kind of, what I would say, space that should be honored, that should be respected in any way. I mean, I personally believe you got to go into your female colleagues room, you better talk to them on intercom first, that you want to come, and give them at least like 2-3 minutes of space, a time, 2-3 minutes of time to get settled down. Okay, and then just go over there, talk. You should work it out, that what you want to talk. And secondly, regarding digital, I personally believe that there are like 9 hours at office,
Hmm.
and if the managers cannot manage their teams to work everything during those 9 hours, I'm talking about the daily tasks, not the strategic ones. Strategy is open for 24/7, to be honest. You never know, you get an idea and you never know you want to share it with somebody, or you never know there is kind of a situation. It depends what kind of role you are playing. Because as far as strategic roles are concerned, definitely these individuals are expected to respond. That's how our corporate culture works. They're expected to respond, even that is with one liners. That really works. But again, when it comes to the managers, it's important that they should make it very exclusive, that if anybody, any other colleague, if they have to talk on formal channels, you know there has to be a justified reason for that. It should actually ring bells, that if my team member, if they get a call from me right now, it's what, like 7:18 p.m. in Pakistan right now. So they should actually be very cautious of the fact that this is something extremely important, that my team lead is calling me right now. So we have to make these contexts very exclusive. So we got to get much done in those 9 hours, cutting on the gossips, and focusing a bit more. But I would rather say, sometimes it just, people just get a bit carried away with, when I tell them that, look, you got to do what you are paid for. You're not paid for gossips. Okay, that is also important. But first, get with the job done.
Also, Nanza,
Get the
I was
job
thinking
done.
कि, apart from the space that we respect, I'm so sorry I'm cutting you in, it just hit me. I mean,
No.
it's also part of basic courtesy that if you're calling somebody out of time also, and now you're also not in physical space in the same vicinity at this point in time, and आप digitally भी किसी को तंग करें, किसी का family time भी हो सकता है, कोई किसी engagement में हो सकता है. So this is so basic courtesy to apologize when you call, or maybe drop in a message before calling because they're
Absolutely.
after hours. That's also
Absolutely.
basic courtesy. And just not
Absolutely.
just you said, मतलब बहुत आपने
Yeah.
अच्छी बात की कि किस तरह खवातीन के कमरे में या उनके ऑफिस में जाने या मुदाखलत के लिए आप पहले इजाज़त ले लें या पहले एक बार रिंग करके पूछ लें. आई थिंक खवातीन के पास भी ये एज होना चाहिए कि वो आराम से सिर्फ ऐसे नहीं एंटर हो सकते. दे ऑल्सो हैव टू रिस्पेक्ट दैट स्पेस. इट शुड बी एक्चुअली इक्वल इन दिस रिगार्ड.
Sure.
You just never know, what is happening.
Exactly.
उसके अलावा this is
Exactly.
something I mentioned right in the beginning, so that I do not forget. Because there's a reason there is a legal office in offices. Harassment is a real issue.
Absolutely.
Just to avoid that,
Absolutely right now it
getting
is.
trained on what your policy revolves around it by HR, like you very rightly mentioned and endorsed, I'll actually second that. That's so crucial to work and operate in organizations. Such a big percentage of women sometimes leave because the culture itself is not, aware of how to be respectful
Exactly.
towards them. So their cities, also their organizations, they're also progressing. But then again, this is something that should be done. Yes, agreed.
Absolutely right, ma'am. So we're just proceeding further with our next question, rather, I would say,
Yes.
or a dimension. To request you to just, reflect a bit more on it, ma'am. How exactly can we set and maintain these boundaries?
So very easy actually. They're just right on the
The
footnote.
action plans.
So it's very interesting that assessing your current boundaries is a good assessment. So किसी भी चीज़ के लिए Japanese rule को हमेशा follow करें. It's an 80-20 rule. You plan first. 80% is good planning, and that will result in 20% of success of execution. So when you come there, what you
Correct.
do is simply assess your current boundaries for now. That's the first thing you do with anything. Your research, your observations, and then feedback, and then that translates into feed forwarding. This is a complete process that has to be engineered every time. So assessing what?
Right.
Taking inventory of your current boundaries and identifying areas that need improvement. So maybe you're in a certain setting, you first assess what's going on, you make observations, and then you
Yeah.
realize what's going on wrong as well. या जो चीज़ ठीक हो सकती है या बेहतर हो सकती है उसके ऊपर बात करके एक सेट ऑफ बाउंड्रीज की तरफ जाते हैं. अब आपने बाउंड्रीज आइडेंटिफाई करने के बाद कहाँ पे मसाइल हैं या जो भी है आप उनको ठीक किया. अब ठीक करने के बाद आपकी क्या ज़िम्मेदारी है? You move towards
Sure.
communicating them clearly. I mean, I have
Absolutely.
felt communication itself is just key to everything. Good parenting, being a good leader, being a कि बॉस भी अपनी विजन या लीडर अपनी विजन भी कम्युनिकेट नहीं करता तो आगे nobody can perform. It's like you're entering a call
Absolutely right.
center एंड जो जिसकी स्लोगन ही यही है कि जी you don't have to wait on calls or something like that, or you're efficient and quick process. However, the caller on the phone is making you wait for minutes and minutes just to get an answer to your
Sure.
query. So जब विजन कम्युनिकेट नहीं होती ना तो ये मसाइल छोटे लेवल पे आते हैं. अपने फ्रंट रनर्स को, अपने फ्रंट लाइन सोल्जर्स को आपने रेडी करना होता है कम्युनिकेशन के थ्रू. So you have to have your team communicated about everything, and that's how you proceed with things. So communication to begin with, and then doing that also very clearly is absolutely crucial and eminent. Simple as that. Cannot just be avoided.
Absolutely right.
So using assertive communication techniques, clearly conveying your boundaries to colleagues and superiors is very important. Now, on behalf of companies, your HR can do this really well. You could hire consultancy firms like ours or so, where people decide and give you a set of rules that can be floated amongst your colleagues. Coming from an external source,
Right.
also, it communicates a very professional demeanor. It communicates a formal setting that is a set tone for your organization. So people really do that. I mean, they practice it for the well-being of their own people. और होता क्या है कि उनकी खुद की डिफाइंड नहीं होती है तो वो इंडस्ट्रियल नॉर्म या स्टैंडर्ड बता के बेंचमार्क बता के फ्लोट कर सकते हैं अपने एम्प्लॉयज के आगे पीछे.
Sure.
That really works. Eventually,
Sure.
what's left is enforcing those boundaries consistently. So HR keeps speaking, new hiring ke waqt, recruitment ke waqt, training ke waqt, you're continuously telling people what this is about. Or kuch nahi. This is also reminding people that we care about your well-being. ये आपके लोगों को भी एक
Sure.
अच्छा मैसेज डिलीवर कर रही है that there is respect, there is honor for you, and there is so much fairness that we try to enforce on people so that it's for the larger good, it's for everybody's betterment. That's my
Exactly
sense
right,
of
ma'am.
this. Ji.
Absolutely right, ma'am. Thank you very much for this. And just to sum up the slide, I mean, clear communication really matters a lot. And you know what? Most of the people they just get a bit reluctant, I would say, in communicating their boundaries. One such very effective way that I personally have discovered years ago, and I still work on that, honestly. Sometimes somebody asks a very personal question, you're not ready to answer, no problem at all. It's very simple. You straight away change the topic. Right away change the topic. Do not respond. Or do not respond to that particular comment that has been made on you. That could be in person, that could be on any, what I would say, a social platform, or that could be on WhatsApp, because there are usually a lot of groups on WhatsApp too. So you just negate it. You just don't pay any attention to it. And I think this is pretty much a message that, look, you have infiltrated and you need to get back. And next time, please don't do that. I think this is pretty much done. Instead of just going into discussion and telling others, sometimes that ends up with a very heinous kind of a conflict. So just to avoid that, save your time, save their time, avoid, and just avoid in a way that you didn't even you heard it, but you didn't react.
Hmm.
So that no reaction is the biggest reaction we can ever get. You see, in a very healthy way, that really works and helps us out.
True.
So one of that, and on top of that, we also need to understand, you see, we also need to understand this fact that if we really want our boundaries to be respected, definitely the others want the same.
I
The others want the same from us.
couldn't agree
It's
more.
always a two-way traffic. It's all about giving and getting.
Always.
It's all about, and sometimes even when we are respecting somebody else's boundary, we're actually telling them that, look, if I am not proceeding further from this point on, at least consider the same on my end.
Hmm.
At least consider the same on my end. If I'm calling you before coming to your office, please try to mirror it. I would appreciate it very well. I think this is pretty much a good thing. And then you talked about integrity. That really helps. That really helps. It determines and defines somebody's personality as a mature person. And you would really like to trust mature person with a bigger role. And this is why most of the people, they struggle a lot with career progression,
Agreed.
because they're very skilled, they know it very well, they can do it very well, but you know what, you don't need to just do the task, you have to work with people as well. So if you're not trustworthy, if you're not mature enough, if my integrity is god forbid questionable, I don't think my superiors will ever hand me with a very important responsibility for that matter. Which brings us to our next question for you, ma'am, is that how exactly the leaders can help their team members to model these boundaries.
So it's interesting and very rightly said. अब मुझे अच्छा लगा आपने जिक्र किया how progression is also affected. I've seen people um, not getting promoted based on a certain way they handle their environment around them. So I think यहाँ हमने
Yeah.
respect की बात की थी. Yes, that's very important. Once you implement these things into your personality, like I said, people who are entering the market suddenly वो तो चलें ठीक है ना, they're naive also, नहीं पता कैसे operate करना है. And trust me,
Yeah.
नान साहब मैं आज भी सीखती हूँ. Very recently, somebody
Exactly.
very close actually made me understand how putting people in their place is a desired role that I have to play to make sure it's so even better for
Right.
them. I realized it the other way around. मुझे
Absolutely.
अंदाजा नहीं था कि वाकई ये चीज़ें इस तरह भी इफेक्ट कर सकती हैं. होता कुछ नहीं है, लोग
Right.
इमोशनल हो जाते हैं आपके अराउंड एंड एवरीथिंग, बट देन giving that little you know distance call sometimes really works. And how
It
do
does.
I do that as a leader is a very big question mark. Should I become friendly with everybody or be empathetic in everything, but still not exude the same thing for others? So I think leading by example
Yeah.
is the way to go about it. सो अक्सर औकात मैंने अपनी टीम से बात करते हुए यही बोला, जब वो कहते हैं, जब माशाल्लाह वो प्रोग्रेशन लेके जा रहे होते हैं और डर रहे होते हैं कि मैडम ये कैसे होगा या किस तरह करना चाहिए जी, इफ़ यू कुड एडवाइस. When I tell or give them some advice, I do tell them just do it the way I do it. And they sort of understand how that
Yeah.
makes sense. Not that I'm trying to boast about what I do. I'm generally
Exactly.
saying
Exactly.
how it's easy to relate because then they understand, yes, this is what's working. You give them a live working example of yourself so that they are enabled to
True.
do the same. So yes, management and leaders, they play a critical role in modeling healthy work boundaries and setting expectations for employees to follow. Suddenly, we're certainly making it a norm there, and it doesn't appear to be a weird or alienating concept somewhere. It looks like something that works.
Sure.
That's how you lead. Open communication, like I said, communication is always key. I mean, it is just the way to go. Communicating openly and establishing clear expectations around boundaries can help create a more respectful, productive workplace, something we discussed very openly and easily. So, doing that also helps.
Sure.
Sometimes people are conflicted, they really don't need to know how to work around it, and then you call them in. Sometimes there are colleagues working in the same department, opposite gender, different culture, coming from different culture, difficult to blend in. You sort of speak it all out. You communicate and you talk about it very openly to just make sure that people are on the same page altogether. Thirdly, you provide support.
Absolutely right.
I think that's the best thing one can do. Like I said, just have an open conversation, support them in making it an easier transition. To understand that employees with necessary resources and support जो है उनको बिल्कुल मिलेगी और establish हम we will establish and maintain healthy boundaries in the workplace. Once you create that aura, it sort of becomes. I've seen people entering your work culture, and trust me, when these boundaries are set so strong, I have seen people coming from very frank cultures and trying to be very over friendly sometimes, actually, and extending that frankness across. I have seen them also stepping back and becoming reserved, and that works.
Yeah.
Trust me, people on the top level are never the people who are too humorous or too jolly or
Exactly.
you know too frank or something like that. They're always in a certain position. That's a very bureaucratic style I'm talking. Maybe बहुत ज़्यादा मैं आपको बहुत ही ज़्यादा एक कहना चाहिए टेक्स्ट बुक डेफिनेशन देना चाह रही हूँ या क्या. But trust me, that's work. There's a certain personality you need to have when you are a leader. You can't just be everything all the time. So yes, humor in its place to put people in place sometimes. I've used it, trust me. But that has never crossed a boundary
Well,
that might hurt somebody. That's the idea. So, my 2 cents on
exactly
this.
right. Thank you very much, ma'am. It's really, really enlightening, and especially, you know what, the thing that you shared about it, that when people they come in from very frank cultures at times, and you know what, in frank cultures, one of the biggest things that I personally experienced when I went to some frank cultures in my career, in 16 years, and so it was just like that. They would just simply pop in.
Hmm.
They would just simply pop in, and just like that. And it also is a part of it that beyond the official hours, you can have a formal communication. There could be a lot of issues that need attention from your colleague, but that doesn't really mean that we should just straight away keep on sharing memes unnecessarily.
Hmm.
That's a very normal practice, especially because since the millennials have come in, they have brought a lot of habits of theirs, a lot of habits of theirs.
True.
And people from our generation and our seniors, they struggle a bit with this.
Hmm.
They struggle a bit with this because a corporate culture is based on certain foundations, and one of those is again, like I said, the boundaries, the limitations. You got to respect the officers, you got to respect the protocols. Protocols, what I would say, is kind of a word that usually these millennials, they are sort of, what I would say, they don't blend in well with it. They feel congested, they feel limited. If you want to be unlimited, you got to be unlimited with the creativity in your work,
True.
not in actually developing and harnessing informal contacts and all that. I'm not saying I'm not against informal contacts. That's pretty good, but that has to be with mutual consent.
I agree.
That has to be with mutual consent. You know what? If one of my colleagues is pretty much okay that I send them a message before 9 p.m., after 5 p.m. of my office, like another 4 hours that I can share,
Hmm.
some kind of a meme with them and all that, and they welcome it. That's pretty good, but that doesn't really mean that I should just send the same to them late at 1 the next morning.
I agree.
So that really, really ends up in a very troublesome sort of a situation, because sometimes it just goes out of hands, and it ends somebody's career as well, for that matter. We've seen it happening, that some careers were put at risk because of this.
So basically,
See, so
consequences
the
follow.
yeah, yeah, please. So, just a bit of consequences that we could discuss, because we've already talked about it. What are the best practices? I think we need to understand that how exactly, if the best practices are not in place, what happens? Over
Absolutely.
to you, ma'am.
So, like we were just discussing in the first slide as well. So, there's a lot of stress that builds. ठीक है जी, तो personal stress भी develop होगा. You will find people being a little disrespectful to each other, and then disrespect becomes a norm, and that's not a good culture. Simple as that. I think above everything and anything is respect. और उस पे compromise हो तो there is something wrong with the culture. That shouldn't go away. People might have disagreements, but that can always be communicated in a civil way. That's how humans have evolved, and they must. So we don't want that happening in the culture that we are living in. On top of it, legal implications, something I've been touching upon very strongly. This can actually call on
Sure,
pursuing each other as well. So this has a very उसकी और बात क्या है कि लीगल implications जब दाखिल हो जाती है किसी भी इदारे के अंदर या किसी भी कंपनी में या ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में, there's a lot of bad mouth that goes around and a lot of
exactly.
मिसकंसेप्शंस एंड समटाइम्स अफवाहें भी उड़ने लग जाती हैं, जो चीज़ नहीं भी हुई उसके ऊपर भी बातचीत शुरू हो
Sure,
जाएगी। मतलब आप सोचिए कि अगर एक दायरा इख्तियार कर लिया जाए, उस दायरे के अंदर हम एक-दूसरे की इज़्ज़त के साथ ऑपरेट करें, तो ये मसाइल ही पैदा ना
sure.
हो। जस्ट टू uproot the
Exactly,
evil to begin
exactly.
with, it's just create your own boundaries and be respectful about them। जी।
Absolutely right, ma'am. No doubt about it, ma'am. So I think, I mean, it's been very wholesome discussion and a lot of insights from you as usual, always. And I think for the managers matter, this really will be helpful for them to understand exactly how they can nurture their team members,
हुँ,
and how can then they need to talk a lot about it. We got to name the words. The first thing we got to do about any certain thing is just to start talking about it.
yeah,
We have to work it out. There are boundaries. The boundaries should not be breached. The boundaries should be honored in any way, and everybody has a right to set a boundary, but it should not be that narrow that the communication suffers,
agreed,
I reckon. So it has to be two-way. It shouldn't be broad enough. It shouldn't be narrow enough that the communication is getting disturbed. So either way, it really helps. It has to be balanced. That's what we would be saying. So I think it's already like 36 minutes. We can just keep on continue asking you questions, but again, we are bound by the times boundaries. I reckon the time boundaries we talked about.
Yes,
So definitely, we'll be coming up with the next session very soon, a new topic very soon. And please, if you haven't already liked our page, our company page on LinkedIn, please do that, because we keep on coming with all these very, very important updates, and a lot of trainings, online trainings as well are there. So the topics are, as usual, sort of what I would say unique, in a sense that we just target the topics that people are not very comfortable while talking individually alone. But then, yes, we facilitate that. And thank you very much to the viewers who have been live with us, and those who are watching it later. We wish you best of luck, and we will keep on coming up with all these important topics. And thank you very much, Mom, again for sparing time for us
most
and with all these insights.
most welcome. All I have to say to people who are out there, if you could just take three cents of mine from here, and they would be to establish a very positive culture in your organizations. Encourage your team to speak to each other like we discussed. Communication is key. Promote growth and development and talk about issues. Trust me, सिर्फ बात करने से बहुत चीज़ों के हल निकल सकते हैं. बात कीजिए और constructively बात कीजिए. Thank you.
Absolutely right. Thanks a lot, Mom. And thank you very much, everybody, with you for your patience. And just hang tight. We're coming up with something new soon.
Inshallah.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.